Hey there. Tonight, let us move slowly, as if walking on a long and peaceful road beneath a quiet sky. Let your breathing soften as the noise of the day fades away. This is a story from very far in the past, from a land shaped by rivers, mountains, and time itself. It is not a story that rushes forward or demands attention. Instead, it gently opens its hands and invites you to listen, to wander, and to rest. Long ago, before the world felt crowded or loud, a child was born into uncertainty, into a place where power felt heavy and silence carried meaning. This child would one day be known as the first emperor. Yet in the beginning, he was simply a small life surrounded by stone walls, whispered fears, and the slow turning of fate. As we begin, there is no need to remember names or dates. Just follow the calm voice of the past as it moves like a soft river through the night. Long before the first emperor shaped the land into one vast realm, the world he entered was already old and weary. The land we now call ancient China was divided and restless, shaped by many small states that rose and fell like gentle waves. Each region had its own rulers, its own customs, and its own quiet struggles. People worked the soil, planted grain, and waited for the seasons to change, while leaders watched one another with careful eyes. There was tension in the air, but it moved slowly, like distant thunder that never quite arrives. War existed, but it was not always loud. Much of it lived in planning, in waiting, and in the long silence between decisions. In this world, the state of Qin rested in the western lands. It was seen as firm and disciplined, shaped by harsh landscapes and strong traditions. Life there was not soft, but it was steady. Laws were clear, expectations were strict, and order mattered deeply. Over time, Qin grew stronger, not through sudden bursts of power, but through patience and structure. Its people learned to endure, to follow rules, and to trust systems rather than emotion. This quiet strength would one day change everything, though no one yet knew how deep its reach would be. The future emperor was born during a time of uncertainty, when trust was fragile and power shifted easily. His birth was surrounded by quiet questions and careful silence. His father was a ruler, yet even that title did not guarantee safety or peace. The child's early life unfolded within palace walls that were both protective and confining. The halls were wide and cool, filled with the sound of footsteps echoing softly against stone. Servants moved gently, speaking in low voices, careful not to draw attention. From a very young age, the child learned that the world was not always kind, and that safety could disappear without warning. He watched adults measure their words and hide their thoughts behind calm faces. Even without understanding the reasons, he felt the weight of caution pressing down around him. This was not a childhood filled with laughter or freedom, but one shaped by awareness and quiet observation. In still moments, he listened more than he spoke, learning from the silence itself. As the child grew, his world remained narrow but intense. The palace was both a school and a cage. Teachers spoke of duty, of strength, and of obedience. They told stories of past rulers, of unity and chaos, of lands divided by pride and brought together by resolve. These lessons were not meant to entertain, they were meant to shape the mind, to prepare a future leader for a hard and demanding world. Outside the palace walls, the people lived simple lives, tied to the earth and the seasons. The child rarely saw them closely, but he heard about them. He was told that a ruler's role was to bring order, to protect the land from disorder and fear. Slowly, the idea took root that unity was not just a dream, but a necessity. Fragmentation led to suffering, while order promised peace. These thoughts settled deep within him, growing quietly over time. As years passed, expectations settled around the young ruler like a heavy cloak. He did not choose this path, yet it shaped every part of his life. Advisors watched him closely, measuring his words, studying his reactions. Some hoped for strength, others feared it. Trust was rare, and loyalty was often mixed with personal desire. Through it all, the future emperor learned to remain still on the surface, even as thoughts moved endlessly beneath. Power, he began to understand, was not loud. It was calm, steady, and unyielding. Those who ruled longest were those who did not hesitate. Doubt invited danger, while certainty created control. These lessons were not taught with kindness, but with repetition and consequence. Slowly, the child's inner world became firm and quiet, like stone shaped by years of wind. Beyond Qin, the other states continued their slow dance of rivalry and alliance. Borders shifted, rulers changed, and promises were made and broken. People longed for stability, though few believed it was truly possible. The idea of a single ruler over all lands felt distant, almost unreal, yet history often moves quietly before it turns. Within the heart of Qin, a young ruler was preparing, shaped by silence, discipline, and vision. He did not yet know how far his reach would extend, or how deeply his choices would echo through time. But the path was forming beneath his feet, steady and inevitable, like a road laid stone by stone. As we pause here, the night remains still. The future emperor stands at the edge of his journey, not yet crowned by history, not yet burdened by legend. He is simply a presence in the dark, shaped by his world and quietly shaping it in return. The land breathes slowly, waiting for change, unaware of how deeply it will soon be transformed. The years passed gently, like slow clouds drifting across a wide sky, and the quiet child grew into a young ruler whose presence carried weight even when he spoke softly. The palace no longer felt quite as large as it once had, yet its walls still held the same cool silence. With time came responsibility, and with responsibility came awareness. The young ruler began to sense that his life was no longer his own. Every choice, every pause, every calm breath mattered to others who watched from nearby shadows. He learned that leadership did not begin with commands, but with patience, with listening, and with the careful study of human nature. Around him, advisors spoke in gentle tones about the state of Qin, about strength built through discipline rather than kindness. They described a world that could not be held together by soft words alone. The young ruler listened without reaction, absorbing these ideas slowly, allowing them to settle within him. He did not rush to judgment. Instead, he waited, understanding that time itself could be a tool. In this waiting, his thoughts grew firm and steady, like roots sinking deeper into the earth. As his role expanded, the young ruler began to attend meetings where matters of state were discussed. These gatherings were calm on the surface, but beneath them flowed quiet tension. Men spoke carefully, choosing each word as if it were a stone placed on a narrow bridge. The ruler observed how people leaned toward power and away from uncertainty. He noticed how loyalty could shift with circumstance, and how fear often hid behind polite smiles. Through these moments, he learned that authority was not simply inherited, it had to be reinforced through action and consistency. Rules meant little if they were not followed, and promises meant less if they were not enforced. Slowly, the ruler began to support clear laws and firm systems, believing that order could soothe unrest more effectively than mercy alone. This belief did not come from cruelty, but from a deep desire for stability, a quiet hope that a well-ordered world could reduce suffering. Among the many voices shaping the ruler's mind were scholars and thinkers who believed deeply in structure and discipline. They spoke of law as a guiding force, one that treated all people the same, regardless of rank. In their calm lessons, they explained that personal feeling could cloud judgment, while clear rules could bring peace. These ideas resonated with the ruler, who had seen how chaos grew when power was uncertain. He did not reject older traditions or wisdom, but he placed them alongside new ways of thinking. He believed that the past offered lessons, not chains. The world was changing, and leadership, he felt, must change with it. His thoughts moved quietly but firmly toward a vision of unity, one shaped by consistency and control rather than emotion. When the time came for the young ruler to take the throne, it did not arrive with celebration or joy. It came with gravity, like a long shadow settling over the land. He was still young, yet the weight of an entire state rested upon his shoulders. The crown felt heavy, not because of its material, but because of what it represented. Every problem, every fear, every hope of Qin now flowed toward him. At first, others ruled beside him, guiding decisions and shaping policy. This arrangement was meant to protect the state and the ruler alike. Yet even in this shared authority, the young king watched closely. He learned who sought true stability and who sought personal gain. He remained patient, allowing time to reveal character. Silence, he discovered, often encouraged truth to surface on its own. The court was not a place of open conflict, but of subtle movement. Power shifted through whispers and alliances rather than open confrontation. The young king sensed danger not in raised voices, but in gentle ones. He understood that threats did not always arrive with weapons. Sometimes they arrived with smiles and reassurance. Rather than react with fear, he chose calm observation. He allowed those around him to reveal themselves through their actions. In this stillness, he prepared himself for the moment when he would need to act. His strength did not come from anger or pride, but from patience and certainty. As the king matured, his vision became clearer. He imagined a land without endless borders, without constant rivalry draining the people's strength. He believed that unity could bring rest, that a single authority could quiet the noise of war. This dream was not born of conquest alone, but of exhaustion with division. The land had suffered long enough under fractured rule. He did not speak this vision loudly. He carried it quietly, shaping his decisions around it, allowing each step to build upon the last. His methods would be firm, sometimes harsh, yet always guided by a belief in long-term peace. In his mind, short pain could lead to lasting calm. At this point in the story, the king of Qin stands steady, neither rushed nor hesitant. The land watches him, though many do not yet realize it. His power is growing, not through sudden acts, but through careful preparation. The night remains calm, and the road ahead stretches quietly into the distance. The young ruler's steps across the land were never hurried, yet they carried the weight of inevitability. In the quiet of his thoughts, he considered the states beyond Qin's borders. Each had its own traditions, its own rhythms, and its own people who tilled the soil and tended animals, much like those within his own realm. The ruler understood that to bring lasting calm, he could not rely on force alone. He needed careful planning, patience and the gentle persistence of a river carving a path through stone over time. He began to study the geography of the land, the character of its leaders, and the hopes and fears of its people, quietly preparing for a future that would unfold slowly but surely. In the courts of neighboring states, there was little awareness of the careful storm gathering in Qin. Rulers continued their routines, relying on tradition, on alliances, and on the familiar ways that had guided their families for generations. Yet the young king watched, learning how each state handled its challenges, noticing strengths and weaknesses, and sensing opportunities where the balance of power could gently shift. He did not move recklessly. Every plan was measured, every decision slow and deliberate, as if he were shaping a long journey by moving only one piece at a time. As the years passed, small actions began to ripple across the land. The ruler implemented systems of communication and governance that allowed Qin to operate with unusual efficiency. Laws were enforced consistently, and the population, accustomed to disorder in other regions, found comfort in the predictability of life under Qin's rule. Roads were maintained, borders protected, and resources distributed in a way that brought quiet prosperity. It was a slow process, almost imperceptible at first, but with each passing season, the power of Qin grew steadily. Even as the king's influence expanded, he remained cautious. Diplomats, messengers, and advisors moved between the states, their words measured and deliberate. The ruler understood that direct confrontation was not always necessary. Sometimes a gentle nudge, a suggestion, or the appearance of wisdom could bring change without the chaos of battle. In this manner, Qin's strength spread like soft sunlight across a quiet morning, touching each region gradually, subtly, and with care. In this period of preparation, the ruler often retreated into reflection. Alone in his chambers, he considered the lives of those he governed, the land itself, and the weight of responsibility that rested on his shoulders. He understood that patience was as much a tool of leadership as laws or armies. Acting too quickly could bring resistance. Waiting allowed people to grow accustomed to the idea of change. And so he practiced restraint, moving only when the moment was truly right. The young king also learned from the scholars who continued to advise him. They spoke of human nature, of the need for consistency, and of the subtle art of influence. The ruler absorbed these lessons quietly, never showing impatience, never betraying uncertainty. In these moments, his inner strength solidified. It was not the strength of a soldier wielding a sword, but of a mind that could hold itself steady while the world shifted around it. Even the people of Qin who saw him as their ruler could sense the calm authority in his presence. There was no hurried command, no loud decree, only quiet confidence, a steady hand guiding the state toward a future that was slowly coming into focus. Farmers, artisans, and soldiers alike began to understand that their lives were changing in ways they could not fully see, yet the rhythm of order and predictability brought them reassurance. Beyond Qin, the neighboring states began to feel subtle shifts. The ruler's advisors communicated with local leaders in ways that seemed ordinary but were calculated with care. Alliances formed, disputes quieted, and old grudges softened under the weight of thoughtful diplomacy. These were not dramatic victories, but gentle adjustments that positioned Qin advantageously. The young king rarely acted in haste, preferring to observe and guide rather than to impose. Even as minor conflicts arose, they were met with strategy and patience rather than loud confrontation. Slowly, one by one, the surrounding states began to recognize the quiet power of Qin. They saw consistency, decisiveness, and the calm authority that did not need to shout to be felt. Change was coming, not like a storm, but like the slow rise of the sun over a misty valley. Within Qin itself, preparations continued in quiet, practical ways. Roads were repaired, walls reinforced, and systems for collecting and distributing resources refined. Soldiers trained consistently, yet not with harshness, but with discipline that emphasized calm readiness rather than panic or excitement. The ruler understood that strength was most effective when paired with steadiness, and that lasting power could only grow from a foundation built carefully over time. He also considered the people of the newly touched lands. Change, even when gentle, could bring anxiety. The ruler contemplated methods to ease transitions, ways to ensure that governance felt stable and predictable rather than sudden and harsh. He believed that a land united by structure, fairness, and foresight would ultimately enjoy a depth of peace unseen in fragmented territories. Every detail, no matter how small, contributed to this vision. The passage of seasons marked the slow accumulation of power. As Qin became more firmly organized, the ruler's vision of unification began to take subtle shape. The states that once seemed distant and independent now existed in a landscape that was increasingly influenced by the quiet authority of Qin. There was no need for constant battle or dramatic displays of strength. Instead, steady progress continued, invisible in many ways, yet undeniable in its results. In this calm period, the ruler remained thoughtful, aware of each choice's potential consequences. He understood that real power required wisdom and restraint, and that the world's natural rhythm could not be forced. By moving gently but with certainty, he guided the land toward the future he envisioned. The path of unification was slow, but it was steady, like a river carving a valley over decades, its influence both persistent and peaceful. As we pause here, the night remains soft and still. The young ruler stands quietly in his chambers, watching the lands he touches without yet fully controlling. His vision is steady, his mind clear, and his purpose quiet but unwavering. The story of unification is not yet complete, but the groundwork has been laid. Patience, observation, and gentle persistence have set the stage for the next chapter. With careful thought and quiet determination, the ruler of Qin began to extend his influence beyond familiar borders. His approach was measured, almost imperceptible at first, yet deliberate in every detail. The lands surrounding Qin were not seized recklessly, nor were their people treated as obstacles to be crushed. Instead, the ruler observed, planned, and acted in ways that allowed transitions to unfold with calm precision. He understood that lasting control required patience, foresight, and the careful nurturing of both loyalty and order. Through subtle diplomacy, the careful placement of officials, and the steady presence of law and structure, Qin's reach began to expand like a slow tide touching the edges of distant shores. As the ruler moved outward, he remained mindful of the people who had lived for generations under different rulers. He did not wish to impose abrupt change, knowing that sudden disruption could breed unrest. Instead, he sent trusted advisors to understand local customs, to build bridges with regional leaders, and to ensure that governance would feel familiar even as it became part of a larger system. The ruler's presence was felt, yet not forcefully. His method was quiet influence, the kind that encourages cooperation by demonstrating consistency and fairness. Not all challenges could be met with diplomacy alone. Some neighboring states resisted the steady pull of Qin's authority. When conflict arose, it was met not with reckless aggression, but with careful planning and strategic patience. Armies were moved with precision, logistics considered, and every action measured to minimize unnecessary suffering. Battles, when they came, were quiet in intensity, lacking the chaotic drama often told in stories of war. Instead, they were calculated, methodical, and ultimately effective in shaping the balance of power. The ruler understood that the purpose of these campaigns was not to glorify victory, but to establish order. His approach to warfare was calm, almost detached, like a gardener pruning branches to ensure a tree's steady growth. Soldiers followed disciplined routines, moving in formations that emphasized control rather than chaos. In this manner, Qin began to bring surrounding regions under its influence with efficiency and quiet authority, creating a foundation for the larger unification yet to come. Beyond the battlefield, governance became the ruler's focus. He believed that a state held together by law and structure could endure far longer than one held together by fear or temporary victories. Systems were refined, roads maintained, and communication strengthened. Taxes, though collected, were organized in a way that allowed communities to continue their daily lives with minimal disruption. Laws were enforced consistently, creating a sense of fairness that earned quiet respect. The ruler's vision of unification relied not only on control, but on stability, and stability came from predictable, steady governance. He also considered the character of those placed in positions of authority. Officials were chosen carefully with attention to their loyalty, their judgment, and their ability to enforce the ruler's vision without unnecessary cruelty. The young king recognized that the character of administrators would reflect on the state itself. By selecting individuals who understood the value of measured action, he ensured that the reach of Qin extended with order rather than chaos, creating harmony where disorder might otherwise take root. Even as the ruler extended Qin's authority, he respected the diversity of the regions under his influence. Language, customs, and local traditions were observed, and efforts were made to integrate them gently into the larger framework of governance. He believed that people were more willing to accept guidance when it did not erase their sense of identity. Cultural continuity became a quiet tool of unification, reinforcing the stability of Qin's expanding domain without provoking unnecessary resistance. In towns and villages, people began to feel the presence of a ruler who combined firmness with fairness. They saw the value of consistent laws and well-maintained infrastructure, and though they had once been independent, they gradually came to accept the authority of Qin. This acceptance was not forced, but nurtured, like seeds given water and sunlight, slowly taking root and growing. Throughout this period, the ruler spent much time observing the world around him. He walked through towns and fields, listening to the rhythms of daily life. He considered the thoughts and hopes of those who lived under his influence, always mindful of the delicate balance between control and compassion. He understood that leadership was not a single moment of triumph, but a slow accumulation of trust and respect built over years through consistent action. The ruler's patience extended even to his own decisions. He did not rush to impose policies that might bring short-term gain at the expense of long-term stability. Instead, he allowed time to reveal the consequences of each choice, adjusting carefully and thoughtfully. This calm approach made him not only a strong ruler, but a wise one, capable of seeing beyond immediate concerns to the enduring future of the land he governed. By this stage, the quiet expansion of Qin had begun to create momentum. Neighboring states, once independent and wary, now felt the steady pull of Qin's authority. Some chose to align voluntarily, recognizing the benefits of stability and order. Others resisted, only to encounter measured force that reinforced the certainty of Qin's reach. In every case, the process was deliberate, aimed at creating a lasting foundation rather than fleeting victories. The ruler's vision of a unified land was slowly becoming reality. Each step was carefully measured, each decision considered with an eye toward continuity and calm. Though the process was far from complete, the story of unification was unfolding gently but undeniably. The land, once fragmented, began to feel the quiet presence of a single guiding hand. As the night deepens, let us rest for a moment in the calm of this unfolding history. The ruler of Qin has moved steadily, expanding his reach through patience, wisdom, and disciplined action. He has begun to knit together the fractured lands with gentle precision, preparing the world for a unity that will touch every corner of the realm. As the lands touched by Qin's quiet influence grew, the ruler understood that expansion alone was not enough. True unification required consolidation, a gentle weaving together of diverse regions into a coherent whole. This process did not happen overnight, nor with loud proclamations, but through slow, steady work, the kind that feels almost invisible until one looks back and sees how far the land has changed. The ruler focused on aligning laws, standardizing measurements, and creating systems that allowed the newly acquired regions to function with predictability and calm. Each adjustment, no matter how small, was made with care, ensuring that stability was maintained even as change progressed. In the courts and towns, officials were placed who could enforce the ruler's vision without unnecessary harshness. They acted as extensions of his steady presence, guiding the people with clear rules and gentle oversight. Through these officials, the ruler cultivated a sense of order and consistency, allowing communities to trust that their daily lives would continue without disruption. The population began to feel a quiet rhythm in governance, a predictable pattern that, though firm, was comforting in its reliability. Not all regions welcomed Qin's influence immediately. In some, subtle resistance persisted, expressed in quiet defiance or hesitancy rather than loud rebellion. The ruler met these challenges not with rash action, but with patience, observation, and measured responses. He learned to differentiate between those who were truly resistant and those who merely needed reassurance that their lives and customs would be respected. By combining careful diplomacy with controlled enforcement, he gradually brought reluctant regions into alignment, allowing them to adjust to the larger framework at a pace that felt sustainable. This period required extraordinary calm. The ruler avoided sudden displays of force that might provoke fear or resentment. Instead, he relied on the consistency of laws, the fairness of officials, and the quiet demonstration of strength that came from disciplined organization. Over time, even the most hesitant regions began to recognize the benefits of stability, as predictable governance reduced uncertainty and allowed daily life to continue without disruption. Central to the ruler's approach was the creation of systems that could function independently of any single person. Roads, canals, and communication networks were carefully maintained, enabling information and resources to flow steadily across the land. This infrastructure not only supported economic growth, but also reinforced the presence of the ruler in places far from the capital. Citizens and local leaders alike began to feel the stabilizing influence of Qin's organization, even without direct contact with the ruler himself. He also worked to standardize weights, measures, and currency, creating a sense of unity and predictability. This standardization allowed trade and daily life to proceed with greater ease, reducing friction between regions that had previously operated under different systems. The ruler understood that small, consistent changes could yield a profound impact over time, quietly binding the land together in ways that would endure for generations. The ruler surrounded himself with scholars, advisors, and observers who could provide insight into the needs and concerns of each region. These quiet minds were encouraged to speak carefully and truthfully, offering information that allowed the ruler to make measured decisions. He valued knowledge not for its spectacle, but for its ability to inform calm, deliberate action. By listening to those who understood the land and its people, the ruler could anticipate potential challenges and respond before they escalated, maintaining harmony without resorting to overt displays of power. Education also became a tool for stability. Local leaders were instructed in the principles of law, governance, and moral duty, creating a network of individuals who could uphold the ruler's vision consistently. The slow dissemination of knowledge reinforced the steady authority of Qin, ensuring that control extended beyond the central court into the farthest reaches of the state. Even as laws and systems spread, the ruler paid careful attention to the cultural lives of his subjects. He recognized that identity and tradition were deeply rooted and that imposing change too quickly could unsettle communities. Instead, he allowed local customs to continue where they did not conflict with the larger framework of governance. Festivals, rituals, and daily practices were respected, creating a sense of continuity even as the regions became part of a greater whole. In this way, Qin's consolidation of power was not only administrative but also cultural. People began to see the ruler's influence not as a force that erased their lives, but as one that allowed them to continue their traditions while benefiting from the stability of a unified land. This approach deepened loyalty quietly, without the need for fear or coercion. Throughout this phase, the ruler remained deeply patient. Every decision was considered carefully. Every action weighed for its long-term effects. He understood that haste could undo years of careful work, while patience allowed change to settle naturally. In this way, he cultivated both order and trust, laying the foundation for a stable, enduring rule. Even as the land came more fully under Qin's influence, the ruler did not seek sudden recognition or personal glory. His focus remained on the long-term well-being of the people and the steady unification of the territory. His leadership was quiet yet undeniable, shaping the world in subtle but profound ways. As we pause here, the night remains calm. The ruler of Qin has begun to consolidate power, aligning regions with care, patience, and deliberate thought. Resistance has been met with measured responses, systems have been strengthened, and culture has been respected, creating a stable foundation for the future. As the ruler's influence continued to grow, his thoughts turned steadily toward the wider world. Beyond the territories already under Qin's control lay regions with their own histories, leaders, and traditions. He did not approach these lands with impatience or the desire for immediate conquest, but with a measured curiosity and careful planning. The ruler understood that true unification required more than strength, it required understanding. He sent envoys to observe, to communicate, and to gently gauge the disposition of neighboring rulers. This quiet intelligence allowed him to anticipate reactions, to discover potential allies, and to understand which regions might welcome guidance and which might resist. Each action was deliberate, unfolding slowly like a dawn spreading its soft light across a valley. Not all expansion came through force. The ruler recognized the value of alliances, not as temporary conveniences, but as lasting bonds that could strengthen the unity of the land. He cultivated relationships with neighboring leaders, offering respect and carefully demonstrating the benefits of cooperation. Gifts, advice, and the presence of Qin officials created subtle incentives for voluntary alignment. In many cases, regions chose to align with Qin quietly, drawn not by fear, but by the promise of stability, consistent governance, and the wisdom of a ruler who acted with calm authority rather than impulsive ambition. These alliances required careful nurturing. The ruler listened, observed, and adjusted his strategies according to each situation. He understood that the appearance of generosity and fairness often carried more weight than a show of power, and that lasting cooperation emerged from trust built slowly over time. In this way, Qin's reach extended steadily, not only through conquest, but also through diplomacy, persuasion, and the quiet cultivation of influence. Even as alliances formed, there remained regions resistant to Qin's vision. Some rulers were wary, unwilling to submit or negotiate. The ruler met these challenges not with haste, but with careful preparation. Armies were organized with precision, supplies were arranged in advance, and strategic plans were crafted thoughtfully. He understood that the mere presence of a disciplined and ready force often encouraged peace more effectively than its use. When conflict did arise, it was deliberate and controlled. The ruler avoided unnecessary suffering, focusing on actions that would achieve objectives efficiently while maintaining order. Battles were conducted with methodical attention to strategy, and soldiers were trained to act in harmony rather than chaos. In this manner, Qin brought resistant regions into alignment without excessive disruption, slowly knitting the land together through both persuasion and carefully managed confrontation. While outward expansion continued, the ruler did not neglect the heart of Qin itself. Infrastructure, agriculture, and local administration were continually refined. Roads and canals were maintained to ensure smooth communication and transport. Cities and towns were supported with consistent governance, creating a model for newly acquired regions to follow. The ruler believed that a strong interior would provide the stability needed to manage the broader unification process. By strengthening the foundations, he ensured that Qin could extend its reach without destabilizing what had already been achieved. Education and law remained central to the ruler's methods. Officials were trained in governance, fairness, and the enforcement of clear rules. Laws were consistent across the land, providing predictability for citizens and reinforcing the ruler's authority without the need for constant oversight. This approach created a network of steady governance that extended beyond the immediate presence of the ruler, allowing his influence to touch even distant regions. Throughout this period, the ruler remained a careful observer of human nature. He watched how individuals and communities responded to change, noting patterns of loyalty, fear, and acceptance. He understood that people were more likely to embrace order when it was presented with calm authority, fairness, and respect for tradition. This awareness guided his actions, ensuring that every decision reinforced stability and encouraged voluntary cooperation. The ruler's patience allowed him to respond thoughtfully to challenges rather than reacting impulsively. He recognized that resistance often stemmed from uncertainty rather than malice, and that understanding these fears could lead to solutions that strengthened unity without unnecessary conflict. In this quiet way, he continued to weave together the diverse threads of the land, creating cohesion that would endure through careful, deliberate guidance. By this stage, the ruler's efforts had created noticeable momentum. The territories under Qin's influence were increasingly interconnected through law, infrastructure, and culture. The ruler's presence, though not always visible, was deeply felt, and the rhythm of his governance brought a sense of calm predictability to a land long accustomed to division and uncertainty. The path toward unification was steady, deliberate, and increasingly apparent to those who observed carefully. Even as challenges persisted, the ruler's calm approach allowed him to address them without destabilizing the progress already made. His authority extended steadily, both through persuasion and measured action, creating a network of loyal leaders, disciplined armies, and cooperative citizens. In this way, the quiet expansion of Qin laid the groundwork for the eventual unification of all the lands under one steady hand. As we pause in this gentle unfolding of history, let the night surround you with calm. The ruler has extended his influence carefully, balancing diplomacy, strategy, and patience. He has nurtured alliances, prepared for resistance, and strengthened the foundations of his state. The path toward becoming the first emperor continues, slow and deliberate, marked by thoughtfulness and quiet determination. With the lands gradually coming under Qin's influence, the ruler's attention turned to the delicate work of consolidation. Expansion alone was insufficient. True unification required that each region feel the presence of a steady hand, one that could guide without overwhelming, enforce without provoking fear, and organize without suppressing life's natural rhythms. The ruler moved with quiet deliberation, refining administrative systems, appointing trustworthy officials, and ensuring that laws were clear, consistent, and fair. In every town, city, and village, people began to sense a pattern of governance that was reliable, predictable, and calm, a gentle rhythm that gradually replaced the uncertainty of fragmented rule. Officials were trained to act as extensions of the ruler's own quiet authority. They enforced laws consistently, managed resources carefully, and guided local communities with a soft but firm hand. The ruler understood that strong leadership was not about dramatic displays or sudden decrees. Rather, it was about creating systems that could function smoothly, allowing life to continue with order and continuity. Roads were maintained, granaries were stocked, and channels of communication connected even distant towns, establishing a network of oversight that was steady yet unobtrusive. Even with careful planning, some regions resisted the quiet expansion of Qin. In these areas, the ruler acted with patience and discernment, observing local leaders and the temperament of the people. He distinguished between those who resisted out of principle and those who resisted out of fear or misunderstanding. In many cases, gentle persuasion, strategic alliances, or the promise of consistent governance was enough to bring acceptance. Where resistance persisted, controlled and measured action was employed, ensuring that the outcome reinforced stability rather than creating fear or resentment. Battles, when necessary, were conducted with careful planning, minimizing disruption while achieving strategic objectives. The ruler's approach to conflict emphasized discipline and precision over chaos. Soldiers moved in organized formations, guided by strict routines and careful coordination. Victory was achieved not through spectacle, but through planning, preparation, and thoughtful execution. In this way, regions that had resisted slowly aligned with Qin, bringing the land closer to unity while maintaining a sense of order and calm. While expanding outward, the ruler never neglected the core of Qin itself. Cities, roads, and canals were maintained and improved to ensure that the center of governance remained strong and functional. Agricultural systems were refined to provide stability for both the local population and the newly acquired regions. By reinforcing the foundations, the ruler ensured that Qin could support the growing demands of governance and maintain control over distant territories. Education and law continued to play central roles in this process. Officials and scholars were trained in the principles of governance, fairness, and loyalty. Clear laws and consistent enforcement created trust among the population, while systems of accountability ensured that officials acted in accordance with the ruler's vision. This method allowed Qin's authority to extend quietly but effectively, touching even remote areas without requiring constant direct oversight. Throughout this period, the ruler remained attentive to the human dimension of leadership. He walked among his people, quietly observing how communities responded to new systems and structures. He noted the patterns of loyalty, fear, and acceptance, understanding that patience and consistent action would gradually bring lasting stability. The ruler recognized that change could be unsettling, and he sought to implement it in ways that minimized anxiety while reinforcing order. By respecting local customs and allowing traditions to continue where possible, the ruler cultivated goodwill. Festivals, rituals, and daily practices were preserved, demonstrating that the authority of Qin did not erase identity, but rather guided it gently within a broader framework. This approach encouraged acceptance, strengthened loyalty, and fostered a sense of continuity even as regions adjusted to new governance. As consolidation continued, the ruler's influence became more apparent across the lands. Communication networks, legal systems, and infrastructure projects created tangible evidence of Qin's presence. People began to experience the benefits of consistent governance, including reliable trade, safe travel, and a sense of security that had been absent in the fragmented states. Even distant regions began to feel connected, guided by the quiet but steady hand of the ruler. The ruler's strength lay not in sudden action, but in patience, foresight, and the careful nurturing of systems that could function independently. Each step was measured, each decision weighed for its long-term impact, and each interaction designed to reinforce the stability and order that formed the foundation of his vision. Slowly, the land was being prepared for the larger goal of complete unification. As night falls, the calm of this history invites reflection. The ruler of Qin has steadily consolidated power, extending influence through careful administration, thoughtful diplomacy, and measured action. Resistance has been managed with patience and precision. Infrastructure has been strengthened, and the population has begun to sense the presence of consistent and fair governance. The land is becoming more connected, more stable, and more aligned with the vision of unification. With the lands gradually coming under Qin's influence, the ruler's attention turned to the delicate work of consolidation. Expansion alone was insufficient. True unification required that each region feel the presence of a steady hand, one that could guide without overwhelming, enforce without provoking fear, and organize without suppressing life's natural rhythms. The ruler moved with quiet deliberation, refining administrative systems, appointing trustworthy officials, and ensuring that laws were clear, consistent, and fair. In every town, city, and village, people began to sense a pattern of governance that was reliable, predictable, and calm, a gentle rhythm that gradually replaced the uncertainty of fragmented rule. Officials were trained to act as extensions of the ruler's own quiet authority. They enforced laws consistently, managed resources carefully, and guided local communities with a soft but firm hand. The ruler understood that strong leadership was not about dramatic displays or sudden decrees. Rather, it was about creating systems that could function smoothly, allowing life to continue with order and continuity. Roads were maintained, granaries were stocked, and channels of communication connected even distant towns, establishing a network of oversight that was steady yet unobtrusive. Even with careful planning, some regions resisted the quiet expansion of Qin. In these areas, the ruler acted with patience and discernment, observing local leaders and the temperament of the people. He distinguished between those who resisted out of principle and those who resisted out of fear or misunderstanding. In many cases, gentle persuasion, strategic alliances, or the promise of consistent governance was enough to bring acceptance. Where resistance persisted, controlled and measured action was employed, ensuring that the outcome reinforced stability rather than creating fear or resentment. Battles, when necessary, were conducted with careful planning, minimizing disruption while achieving strategic objectives. The ruler's approach to conflict emphasized discipline and precision over chaos. Soldiers moved in organized formations, guided by strict routines and careful coordination. Victory was achieved not through spectacle, but through planning, preparation, and thoughtful execution. In this way, regions that had resisted slowly aligned with Qin, bringing the land closer to unity while maintaining a sense of order and calm. While expanding outward, the ruler never neglected the core of Qin itself. Cities, roads, and canals were maintained and improved to ensure that the center of governance remained strong and functional. Agricultural systems were refined to provide stability for both the local population and the newly acquired regions. By reinforcing the foundations, the ruler ensured that Qin could support the growing demands of governance and maintain control over distant territories. Education and law continued to play central roles in this process. Officials and scholars were trained in the principles of governance, fairness, and loyalty. Clear laws and consistent enforcement created trust among the population, while systems of accountability ensured that officials acted in accordance with the ruler's vision. This method allowed Qin's authority to extend quietly but effectively, touching even remote areas without requiring constant direct oversight. Throughout this period, the ruler remained attentive to the human dimension of leadership. He walked among his people, quietly observing how communities responded to new systems and structures. He noted the patterns of loyalty, fear, and acceptance, understanding that patience and consistent action would gradually bring lasting stability. The ruler recognized that change could be unsettling, and he sought to implement it in ways that minimized anxiety while reinforcing order. By respecting local customs and allowing traditions to continue where possible, the ruler cultivated goodwill. Festivals, rituals, and daily practices were preserved, demonstrating that the authority of Qin did not erase identity, but rather guided it gently within a broader framework. This approach encouraged acceptance, strengthened loyalty, and fostered a sense of continuity even as regions adjusted to new governance. As consolidation continued, the ruler's influence became more apparent across the lands. Communication networks, legal systems, and infrastructure projects created tangible evidence of Qin's presence. People began to experience the benefits of consistent governance, including reliable trade, safe travel, and a sense of security that had been absent in the fragmented states. Even distant regions began to feel connected, guided by the quiet but steady hand of the ruler. The ruler's strength lay not in sudden action, but in patience, foresight, and the careful nurturing of systems that could function independently. Each step was measured, each decision weighed for its long-term impact, and each interaction designed to reinforce the stability and order that formed the foundation of his vision. Slowly, the land was being prepared for the larger goal of complete unification. As night falls, the calm of this history invites reflection. The ruler of Qin has steadily consolidated power, extending influence through careful administration, thoughtful diplomacy, and measured action. Resistance has been managed with patience and precision, infrastructure has been strengthened, and the population has begun to sense the presence of consistent and fair governance. The land is becoming more connected, more stable, and more aligned with the vision of unification. As the ruler of Qin continued to extend his influence, the vision of a fully unified land grew clearer in his mind. The slow, deliberate work of expansion, diplomacy, and administration had created a foundation of stability that few could challenge. Neighboring states were aware of Qin's quiet strength, and many had already aligned themselves through choice or careful persuasion. Yet some regions remained hesitant, holding on to their independence and traditions. The ruler approached these final stages of unification with patience, understanding that lasting peace required more than mere submission. It required careful integration, respect for local identity, and consistent governance that would endure beyond any single lifetime. The ruler's strategy combined observation, diplomacy, and measured action. He sent envoys to engage with leaders, listen to their concerns, and offer solutions that emphasized mutual benefit. He allowed the passage of time to demonstrate the advantages of Qin's systems, predictable laws, secure roads, and efficient administration. This quiet approach gradually shifted the perspectives of resistant rulers, who began to see that alignment with Qin offered stability and prosperity that independent rule could not guarantee. Even as subtle resistance persisted, the ruler prepared for necessary action with meticulous planning, ensuring that any intervention would reinforce order rather than provoke lasting resentment. In these final stages, the ruler's understanding of human nature became a crucial tool. He recognized that people's attachment to tradition, family, and local leadership could not be dismissed. By respecting customs where possible and maintaining consistent governance, he allowed regions to adjust gradually to the larger framework of Qin's authority. Even when military intervention was required, it was executed with discipline and precision, minimizing unnecessary disruption. Soldiers acted as instruments of calm order rather than chaos, reflecting the ruler's steady philosophy of leadership. The ruler's strength lay not in displays of dominance, but in the ability to combine firmness with foresight and empathy. By balancing these qualities, he created a system in which people could accept new authority while retaining a sense of continuity in their daily lives. Over time, this approach reduced resistance and increased voluntary cooperation, making the process of unification both effective and sustainable. Central to the success of these efforts was the continued refinement of administrative systems. Officials were placed strategically to maintain consistency, enforce laws fairly, and ensure the smooth flow of resources and information. Roads, canals, and communication networks connected distant regions to the heart of Qin, providing both oversight and support. The ruler invested in training officials, ensuring that knowledge of governance, law, and morality spread steadily throughout the land. This network of governance allowed the ruler's presence to be felt even in the farthest territories, reinforcing unity without the need for constant direct oversight. Standardization became a key tool for integration. Weights, measures, and currency were harmonized across the unified regions, creating predictability and ease of daily life. Trade and communication flourished as people adjusted to a shared system, further reinforcing the perception of Qin as a stable and reliable authority. These subtle yet profound changes nurtured loyalty and reduced friction, solidifying the ruler's influence across the land. Even in the pursuit of unification, the ruler recognized the importance of cultural continuity. Local festivals, rituals, and practices were preserved whenever possible, allowing communities to retain a sense of identity. This approach encouraged acceptance, as people experienced the expansion of Qin's authority not as an erasure of their lives, but as a steady framework that enabled them to continue their traditions with added security and stability. Cultural respect became a quiet instrument of cohesion, reinforcing the ruler's authority while maintaining harmony. By the time the final stages of unification were underway, the ruler's methods had borne fruit. Regions once resistant had been guided into alignment, whether through persuasion, strategic alliances, or carefully managed intervention. The network of officials, communication channels, and standardized systems ensured that governance remained consistent, predictable, and fair. The land was no longer fragmented. It was becoming a cohesive realm united under the steady hand of one ruler who understood the balance between firmness, patience, and foresight. The ruler's quiet triumphs were not celebrated with fanfare, but they were deeply consequential. Every territory integrated, every system harmonized, and every alliance nurtured brought the dream of unification closer to reality. Change was unfolding not as sudden upheaval, but as a gentle, inevitable shift toward order and stability. As night falls over the lands of Qin, there is a calm sense of anticipation. The ruler has navigated the final stages of unification with care, patience, and wisdom. Resistance has been managed, governance strengthened, and the land gradually knit together in a pattern of quiet cohesion. The vision of a single, unified realm is within reach, shaped not by chaos or fear, but by deliberate, thoughtful action that honors both law and life itself. As the ruler of Qin approached the culmination of unification, his vision of a single, harmonious land became increasingly tangible. The years of careful planning, patient diplomacy, and disciplined administration had prepared him for this moment. The regions once fragmented, each with its own customs, laws, and leadership, were now gradually coalescing under the framework of Qin's authority. The ruler moved with quiet certainty, aware that the final steps required both tact and measured action, ensuring that stability would be preserved while the long-sought unity became complete. The remaining territories, though fewer in number, presented challenges that required sensitivity and precision. The ruler sent trusted envoys to observe, advise, and negotiate, emphasizing the benefits of alignment rather than imposing force unnecessarily. Through these conversations, he demonstrated fairness, consistency, and respect for local practices, cultivating trust and reducing the likelihood of rebellion. His influence grew not by coercion alone, but through the steady demonstration of the advantages of a unified system, where law, infrastructure, and governance provided security and prosperity for all. When subtle resistance persisted, the ruler acted with strategic discipline. Military forces, trained with precision and guided by strict routines, were deployed only when absolutely necessary. Battles were conducted methodically, with an emphasis on efficiency and minimal disruption to civilian life. The ruler's philosophy of leadership emphasized calm, measured authority, and this approach transformed potential conflict into a tool for establishing order. By acting with restraint and foresight, he brought even hesitant regions into alignment without fostering lasting resentment, reinforcing the perception of Qin's power as both strong and just. In parallel, administrative systems were strengthened to accommodate the expanding realm. Officials were strategically positioned throughout newly aligned territories, ensuring consistent law enforcement, resource management, and communication with the central authority. The ruler's presence, though not always physically felt, became tangible through these systems, reinforcing unity and stability across the land. A key element in consolidating the unified realm was standardization. Weights, measures, and currency were harmonized across all territories, allowing trade and daily life to proceed with predictability. Roads, canals, and postal systems created reliable channels for communication, connecting even remote regions to the heart of Qin. This consistency fostered trust and facilitated cooperation, making the ruler's authority feel steady and dependable. By creating a framework in which daily life was organized and predictable, the ruler laid the groundwork for a cohesive society capable of enduring for generations. Education and governance remained central to his vision. Local officials were trained in law, ethics, and administration, ensuring that knowledge spread evenly and consistently. Scholars and advisors worked closely with regional leaders to transmit principles of fairness and loyalty, embedding the ruler's philosophy within the fabric of society. Through these quiet but thorough efforts, the ruler created a network of authority that extended beyond his immediate presence, weaving the land together in a coherent and lasting structure. Even as he extended his control, the ruler respected cultural diversity. Local festivals, customs, and rituals were preserved wherever possible, allowing communities to maintain their identity within the larger framework of Qin. This approach strengthened loyalty and minimized unrest, reinforcing the ruler's reputation as a leader who valued both order and humanity. Through patience, foresight, and constant action, the ruler brought the final territories into harmony with Qin's authority. The fragmented states were now part of a single, cohesive realm, united under a framework of law, infrastructure, and governance that spanned the entire land. The process had been gradual and deliberate, relying on careful observation, measured diplomacy, and disciplined enforcement rather than haste or brute force. By the time unification was nearly complete, the land was stabilized, its people accustomed to consistent governance, and the ruler's vision of a single, orderly empire within reach. The quiet victories of this period were profound, though understated. Every region integrated, every system standardized, and every alliance nurtured contributed to the enduring coherence of the realm. Change moved gently but persistently, guided by the ruler's steady hand, and the story of Qin's unification unfolded like the slow rise of the sun over a wide, peaceful valley. As we pause in the calm of night, it is worth reflecting on the path that has brought Qin to the threshold of empire. Years of patient expansion, careful diplomacy, and disciplined administration have created a land gradually transformed from fragmentation into unity. Resistance has been addressed thoughtfully, governance strengthened, and the population increasingly aligned with the vision of a stable and orderly realm. The long journey toward unification had brought the ruler of Qin to a moment both quiet and monumental. Having carefully guided the land through decades of expansion, consolidation, and measured diplomacy, he now stood on the threshold of becoming the first emperor. There were no grand fanfares, no sudden proclamations shouted through crowded streets. Instead, the moment was marked by calm deliberation, a conscious recognition of the work that had brought the fragmented lands together under one steady hand. The ruler understood that this title was more than honor, it was responsibility, a commitment to maintain order, stability, and prosperity across the entire realm. The ceremony itself was simple and deliberate, reflecting the ruler's philosophy of leadership. Advisors, officials, and trusted allies were present, each representing a region now part of the unified land. Their presence symbolized the harmony achieved through patient diplomacy, careful administration, and consistent enforcement of law. The ruler accepted the title of emperor not with boastfulness, but with quiet acknowledgement of the work still to come. It was a recognition of achievement, yes, but also a commitment to stewardship, to guiding the people and the land with wisdom, care, and unwavering dedication. As the first emperor, his responsibilities expanded, yet his approach remained consistent with the philosophy that had guided him from the earliest days of his rule. He continued to refine administrative systems, ensuring that laws were applied fairly and consistently, that officials were well trained, and that communication networks functioned smoothly across the vast territory. Infrastructure projects, roads, canals, and postal systems connected distant regions to the central authority, reinforcing stability and enabling efficient governance. In every action, the emperor sought to maintain calm order, supporting the daily lives of citizens while strengthening the cohesion of the unified realm. Education and scholarship remained central to his administration. Officials and local leaders were trained carefully, instilling principles of fairness, loyalty, and governance. Advisors provided insights, observing the land and its people, and offering strategies to maintain harmony and efficiency. The emperor valued knowledge as a tool for foresight and stability, understanding that a well-informed network of leaders could uphold his vision far beyond his immediate presence. Even as the land was united, the emperor remained attentive to the challenges of maintaining order across a vast territory. Subtle resistance occasionally emerged, yet it was met with measured action, consistent laws, and disciplined administration, rather than chaos or intimidation. Military forces, when required, acted with precision and restraint, reinforcing the authority of the emperor without disrupting daily life unnecessarily. This careful balance of discipline and consideration cultivated loyalty and minimized unrest, allowing the unified realm to function with quiet efficiency. The emperor also recognized the importance of balancing standardization with respect for local culture. Customs, festivals, and rituals were preserved wherever possible, allowing communities to retain their identity while aligning with the central authority. By honoring tradition alongside governance, he fostered goodwill, strengthened trust, and encouraged voluntary cooperation, creating an enduring framework for unity that was as much social and cultural as it was political. Becoming the first emperor was not merely the culmination of conquest, it was the establishment of a lasting vision for the land. The emperor's legacy was being formed quietly through the systems he created, the laws he enforced, and the culture of stability and order he nurtured. The unified realm now had a coherent structure where citizens could rely on predictable governance, secure infrastructure, and fair administration. Across valleys, rivers, and mountains, the presence of the emperor was felt not as fear or imposition, but as calm, steady guidance. The slow, deliberate steps that led to this moment, the patient observation, careful planning, measured diplomacy, and precise administration had transformed a land once divided into a cohesive empire. Every region integrated, every system harmonized, and every leader aligned under the same vision. The emperor's work was ongoing, yet the foundation he had built ensured that the empire could endure, providing stability and continuity for generations to come. As night descends over the unified land, we take a quiet moment to reflect. The ruler who began as a king of a single state has become the first emperor, guiding a realm with calm authority, foresight, and patience. The journey was long and deliberate, marked by careful strategy, gentle persuasion, and disciplined action. Change unfolded not as chaos, but as steady, inevitable transformation, creating a land united through law, culture, and order. With the title of First Emperor firmly established, the ruler of Qin turned his attention to the delicate task of shaping an empire that could endure for generations. Though the land had been unified, maintaining harmony across such a vast territory required constant attention, careful administration, and the continuation of the principles that had guided him from the earliest days of leadership. He approached these responsibilities with calm diligence, understanding that the strength of an empire lay not in conquest alone, but in the steady, thoughtful management of law, culture, and human relationships. One of the emperor's primary focuses was the refinement of governance. Officials were carefully selected and trained, instructed in the principles of fairness, loyalty, and responsibility. Systems were established to ensure that laws were applied consistently, resources were managed efficiently, and communication flowed seamlessly between the central authority and the farthest reaches of the empire. By creating a reliable framework for governance, the emperor allowed the land to function smoothly, fostering a sense of security and predictability among the population. Standardization was a cornerstone of the emperor's strategy for unity. Measures, weights, currency, and written scripts were harmonized across the empire, providing consistency that facilitated trade, communication, and daily life. Yet even as he pursued uniformity, the emperor remained mindful of the importance of local traditions. Festivals, rituals, and customs were preserved wherever possible, allowing communities to maintain their cultural identity while participating in a larger, orderly system. This careful balance of uniformity and respect nurtured loyalty and encouraged voluntary cooperation, reinforcing the stability of the empire. The emperor understood that culture could be a subtle yet powerful tool for cohesion. By honoring local practices, he reduced resistance and strengthened the perception of his rule as just and considerate. People began to accept the authority of the central government not out of fear, but through recognition of its fairness, stability, and the benefits it brought to daily life. This quiet integration of culture and governance became a defining feature of his reign. Physical infrastructure played a critical role in maintaining the unity of the empire. Roads, canals, and communication systems were expanded and carefully maintained, linking distant regions to the capital and facilitating the flow of information, goods, and resources. Travelers and merchants could move safely, messages could be delivered efficiently, and officials could oversee territories more effectively. The emperor's attention to these details created a living network that connected the empire, allowing it to function as a coherent whole. Agriculture and resource management were similarly refined. Granaries were stocked, irrigation systems maintained, and land carefully administered to ensure that the population could be supported without disruption. The emperor's policies were designed to promote stability, reduce uncertainty, and allow communities to thrive within the larger framework of the empire. By attending to both infrastructure and daily life, he reinforced the practical benefits of unity, deepening the population's acceptance of his authority. Throughout his reign, the first emperor remained an attentive observer. He walked through towns and villages, spoke with officials, and listened to the people. He studied how communities responded to new laws, infrastructure, and cultural integration, adjusting policies with care to maintain harmony. His approach combined firmness with empathy, allowing him to address challenges thoughtfully and prevent unrest before it could grow. By staying attuned to the rhythms of life in his empire, he reinforced the steady, deliberate nature of his leadership. The emperor's patience was a hallmark of his governance. Decisions were made with foresight, considering not only immediate outcomes but the long-term health of the empire. He understood that true power lay in consistency, in creating a system that could function independently of any single individual, while reflecting his guiding principles. This methodical, thoughtful approach allowed the empire to grow stronger and more stable with each passing year. By maintaining this balance of law, culture, and infrastructure, the first emperor shaped a realm that could endure. His leadership was not marked by chaos or fear, but by careful planning, disciplined administration, and respect for the people and traditions of the land. Each region, once independent and distinct, became part of a larger whole, guided by systems that promoted stability, fairness, and cohesion. This slow, deliberate steps he took ensured that the empire would persist long after his own time, as a testament to steady, thoughtful leadership. As the night deepens, let us rest in the calm presence of this historical journey. The first emperor has transformed the land, not through spectacle or sudden force, but through patience, foresight, and careful attention to the rhythms of governance and culture. His empire is now a living system, connected by law, infrastructure, and shared purpose. As the first emperor settled into his role, the work of shaping the empire continued with quiet diligence. Unification had been achieved, yet the true task of leadership lay in ensuring that the empire remained stable, orderly, and prosperous. The emperor approached this task with the same measured patience that had guided him from the earliest days of expansion. He understood that the longevity of the realm depended not only on law and military strength, but on the careful cultivation of systems, culture, and public trust that could endure far beyond any individual lifetime. The emperor focused first on strengthening governance networks. Officials were strategically placed throughout the empire, trained in the principles of fairness, accountability, and effective administration. These officials acted as extensions of the emperor's authority, ensuring that laws were enforced consistently, resources were managed efficiently, and communication flowed smoothly. By creating a network of competent and loyal leaders, the emperor allowed his influence to reach even the most distant regions without the need for constant personal oversight. This system of governance became the backbone of the empire, quietly reinforcing stability and coherence across the vast territory. A cornerstone of the emperor's strategy for enduring unity was the standardization of everyday life. Measures, weights, and currency were harmonized across the empire, simplifying trade, commerce, and daily routines. Written scripts were standardized, allowing communication, record-keeping, and administration to function seamlessly. These reforms were not imposed abruptly, but gradually, giving communities time to adjust while observing the practical benefits of uniformity. In doing so, the emperor cultivated a sense of cohesion and reliability that made the empire feel like a single, interconnected whole. Even as uniformity expanded, the emperor respected the diversity of local culture. Festivals, rituals, and traditional practices were preserved wherever possible, allowing people to maintain their sense of identity while participating in the larger structure of governance. This thoughtful integration of tradition and administration nurtured loyalty, reduced resistance, and reinforced the perception of the emperor's rule as just, balanced, and considerate. Physical infrastructure remained a vital focus for the emperor. Roads, canals, and communication channels were maintained and extended, connecting distant regions to the central authority. Merchants, travelers, and officials could move safely and efficiently, ensuring that commerce, governance, and information flowed without interruption. Granaries were stocked and irrigation systems maintained, supporting agriculture and securing the food supply for the empire. These investments reinforced the practical benefits of unification, demonstrating to citizens that the empire provided both stability and tangible support for daily life. By attending to these foundational aspects of society, the emperor ensured that the empire functioned as an integrated system. The physical networks of roads and canals mirrored the organizational networks of officials and laws, creating a web of stability that extended across mountains, rivers, and valleys. This quiet but powerful integration allowed the empire to endure and adapt even in the face of challenges or changes in leadership. Throughout his reign, the emperor remained a careful observer of his people. He listened to officials, spoke with citizens, and noted the effects of policies on daily life. By maintaining awareness of the population's needs and responses, he could adjust his approach thoughtfully, ensuring that governance remained effective, fair, and harmonious. This attentiveness reinforced the steady rhythm of the empire, allowing it to grow stronger without relying solely on force or intimidation. The emperor's patience and foresight were hallmarks of his leadership. Decisions were made with an eye toward the long-term stability of the empire, balancing immediate needs with enduring structures that are standing, allowed him to guide the empire gently yet effectively, creating an enduring framework of law, culture, and administration. By this stage, the first emperor had laid the foundations for a lasting legacy. The empire was united not only through conquest, but through thoughtful governance, careful standardization, and respect for culture.
Each region, once independent and distinct, now participated in a coherent system that fostered stability, prosperity, and continuity. The slow, deliberate work of unification had transformed the land into a cohesive realm, prepared to endure through generations. As we rest in the quiet of history, consider the steady rhythm of the emperor's reign. Unification, administration, and cultural integration have created a realm that functions as a single, interconnected system. The first emperor's careful balance of authority, patience, and foresight has shaped a land that thrives on stability, predictability, and fairness.
With the empire now unified and governance networks firmly established, the first emperor turned his attention to nurturing the cultural and social fabric of his realm. He understood that lasting stability depended not only on laws and infrastructure, but also on the shared values, customs, and daily experiences of the people. By quietly guiding the development of culture and social norms, he could foster a sense of belonging and cohesion that extended beyond political authority. His approach was gentle, measured, and thoughtful, encouraging communities to retain their traditions while gradually integrating into a broader, unified identity. Education became a subtle but powerful tool in this process. Schools were established, and scholars trained to teach not only literacy and practical knowledge, but also principles of law, ethics, and governance. By providing a consistent framework of learning across the empire, the emperor ensured that future generations would understand the values and systems underpinning the unified realm. Knowledge became a bridge, connecting distant regions and reinforcing loyalty to a stable, consistent authority. The spread of learning helped to cultivate a sense of shared identity and purpose, quietly weaving the people together across vast distances. The first emperor also focused on social harmony, recognizing that disputes, misunderstandings, and local tensions could threaten the delicate balance of the empire. Officials were trained to mediate conflicts, enforce laws fairly, and ensure that communities functioned smoothly. Policies were designed to minimize unnecessary friction, offering guidance while respecting local customs. In this way, social order was reinforced not through fear, but through consistent support and impartial administration. People began to experience the benefits of living in a unified realm: safer travel, secure homes, and the knowledge that justice and fairness were more than ideals. They were active parts of daily life. Festivals and local rituals were carefully preserved and, in some cases, encouraged. By allowing these cultural expressions to continue, the emperor fostered goodwill, strengthened loyalty, and helped citizens feel connected to both their local communities and the larger empire. This attention to cultural continuity was subtle but powerful, creating a sense of continuity and trust that reinforced the authority of the central government while preserving individuality and tradition. The emperor continued to invest in infrastructure as a means of connecting and supporting his people. Roads and canals were repaired and extended, enabling smoother trade, travel, and communication. Granaries were maintained, ensuring stable food supplies even in times of challenge. Cities and towns were carefully managed, with local governance operating under consistent standards of law and administration. This attention to detail reinforced the perception of the empire as reliable and caring, a place where daily life could flourish under steady oversight. Infrastructure was more than physical. It was a way to create cohesion across the empire. The network of roads, canals, and postal routes mirrored the network of officials, education, and laws. ensuring that all regions felt the presence of the central authority without experiencing it as intrusion. Citizens in far-flung territories could rely on the structures of governance, trade, and communication to function smoothly, reinforcing the unity of the realm in everyday experience. Throughout these efforts, the first emperor remained an attentive observer. He listened to officials, spoke with communities, and studied the effects of new policies. This careful attention allowed him to adjust initiatives thoughtfully, addressing emerging challenges while reinforcing harmony and stability. He recognized that the empire was a living system, and maintaining its health required constant, gentle guidance rather than rigid enforcement. This ongoing attention helped the empire adapt to changing circumstances while maintaining continuity and trust. By carefully balancing governance, culture, and infrastructure, the first emperor solidified a lasting foundation for the empire. The people experienced not only the authority of a single ruler, but also the tangible benefits of stability, predictability, and fairness. Communities were connected through law, education, and infrastructure, while local traditions were respected, creating an enduring sense of belonging. The empire had become more than a political entity. It was a carefully cultivated system of society, culture, and governance designed to endure through generations. As night deepens, rest in the calm continuity of this historical journey. The first emperor has guided the realm with steady hands, balancing law, culture, infrastructure, and human understanding to create an empire that thrives in harmony. His legacy is being quietly woven into the daily lives of the people, creating a stable, enduring foundation for the future. As the first emperor's reign continued, he turned increasingly to the refinement of administrative systems and legal structures, understanding that a strong empire required not only unity, but efficiency, fairness, and predictability. While unification had brought the territories under one rule, it was the consistent application of governance that would maintain order and ensure longevity. The emperor approached this work with quiet patience, careful thought, and a steady hand, making adjustments that reinforced stability without creating disruption or fear. Officials throughout the empire were trained rigorously in law, administration, and ethics. Their role was not merely to enforce rules, but to act as thoughtful stewards of the emperor's vision, mediating disputes, managing resources, and guiding communities in harmony with established principles. By investing in competent and loyal administrators, the emperor created a network of authority that extended across the empire, allowing his policies to be implemented consistently even in regions far from the capital. This deliberate attention to governance created a sense of reliability, enabling citizens to live with trust in the structures surrounding them. Legal standardization became a central feature of the first emperor's strategy. Clear, consistent laws were established across all territories, simplifying administration and providing predictability for citizens. Justice was administered with a focus on fairness and practicality, reinforcing the idea that rules existed to maintain harmony rather than to impose arbitrary power. In this way, law became a subtle instrument of unity, guiding behavior, fostering cooperation, and creating shared expectations for daily life across diverse communities. Even as laws were standardized, the emperor remained mindful of local conditions and traditions. Officials were instructed to consider context and apply rules in ways that preserved social cohesion. This nuanced approach allowed the empire to function effectively without erasing the unique qualities of each region, creating a system that was both uniform and adaptable, strong yet gentle in its application. Alongside governance and law, the emperor continued to invest in the physical infrastructure that supported daily life and economic stability. Roads, bridges, and canals were maintained and expanded, ensuring that people, goods, and information could move efficiently across the empire. Granaries were carefully managed to provide reliable food supplies even during challenging seasons, and irrigation systems were maintained to support agriculture. These efforts were not merely practical, they also reinforced the perception of the emperor as a steady, caring presence. Citizens experienced the benefits of the empire in tangible ways: safe travel, reliable food, accessible communication, and efficient administration. By attending to both the material and organizational needs of the realm, the first emperor created an environment where daily life could flourish under consistent and thoughtful oversight. Throughout these initiatives, the first emperor remained a careful observer. He listened to advisors, spoke with local leaders, and monitored the effects of policies on communities. His approach was iterative and reflective, allowing him to make measured adjustments while maintaining stability. He recognized that the empire was a living system and that ongoing attentiveness and adaptation were necessary to preserve harmony and efficiency across vast and diverse territories. Patience remained a hallmark of his leadership. Decisions were made with foresight, considering long-term consequences alongside immediate outcomes. By combining firmness with attentiveness and empathy, the emperor was able to guide the empire steadily, addressing challenges quietly and preventing minor issues from becoming disruptions. This careful management reinforced the cohesion of the realm and nurtured trust among both officials and citizens. By this stage, the first emperor had established a robust administrative and legal framework, supported by reliable infrastructure and attentive governance. The empire functioned as a connected, predictable system in which citizens could rely on the consistency of laws, the efficiency of officials, and the stability of daily life. Each region, while retaining elements of its local identity, participated in a larger structure of harmony and order, ensuring both cohesion and resilience. As night settles over the empire, consider the quiet strength of this moment. The first emperor's careful refinement of administration, law, and infrastructure has created an enduring foundation for the realm, one that balances authority with fairness, standardization with cultural respect, and governance with empathy. The empire now moves forward with steady continuity, ready to endure through generations. As the years of the first emperor's reign advanced, a calm and steady rhythm settled over the unified land. The work of unification, administration, law, and culture had created a framework that allowed the empire to function with harmony, efficiency, and resilience. Though the emperor's life was finite, the systems he put in place ensured that the realm would endure beyond his own presence, continuing to nurture stability, prosperity, and cultural cohesion. The story of his reign is not one of spectacle or dramatic upheaval, but of patience, careful planning, and thoughtful guidance that quietly transformed a fragmented land into a lasting empire. Even in his later years, the emperor remained attentive to the needs of the people. He observed the functioning of officials, the well-being of communities, and the rhythms of trade and agriculture. Adjustments were made subtly and deliberately, ensuring that policies continued to support harmony without creating disruption. Roads were maintained, canals repaired, and granaries stocked. Education continued, reinforcing the principles of governance, ethics, and literacy that helped maintain unity across the diverse empire. Through these small yet consistent acts, the emperor's presence was felt not as intrusion, but as steady guidance, a reassuring force that allowed citizens to live with security and predictability. The cultural and social foundations established during his reign remained strong. Local traditions, festivals, and rituals were preserved, allowing communities to maintain their unique identities while participating in the larger fabric of the empire. This careful balance of standardization and cultural respect strengthened loyalty and trust, embedding the emperor's vision deeply within the daily lives of the people. The empire functioned as a living system, interconnected through law, governance, infrastructure, and shared values, all nurtured under the steady hand of its first ruler. The first emperor's achievements were subtle yet profound. He had transformed a land long divided by history, geography, and culture into a cohesive and enduring realm. Every region was connected through law, infrastructure, and administration. Every citizen experienced the benefits of consistent governance. Every official acted as a steward of stability and fairness. Through patience, foresight, and thoughtful guidance, he had created an empire that could endure for generations, providing a model of leadership rooted in calm authority and careful attention to human needs. As we draw this journey to a close, it is worth reflecting on the quiet strength of his legacy. The first emperor's story is not told in tales of sudden conquest or dramatic upheaval, but in the steady accumulation of trust, order, and cohesion. His work demonstrates that true power lies in thoughtful, measured action, in the ability to guide a land and its people gently yet decisively, and in the foresight to build systems that endure long after one's own life. Rest now in the gentle rhythm of history. The first emperor has left a land unified, stable, and prepared for the generations to come. His legacy whispers through the roads, canals, laws, and customs he nurtured, reminding us that patience, wisdom, and steady guidance can shape not only kingdoms, but the very course of human life across time. And so, in the quiet of night, we leave the story of the first emperor, a tale of calm perseverance, thoughtful leadership, and enduring impact. Allowing the mind to relax, the heart to settle, and the imagination to drift peacefully through the echoes of a unified empire.